Bullies choke a student until he passes out. The next day, he got brutal revenge. The bathroom floor felt cold against Marcus Chen's cheek as consciousness slowly returned. His throat burned and his head pounded with each heartbeat. Above him, three faces stared down, a mixture of triumph and uncertainty flickering across their features. Marcus knew this moment would change everything. But to understand how it came to this, we need to go back 3 months. Marcus Chen had mastered the art of invisibility, or so he thought. At 16, his lean frame and quiet demeanor should have helped him blend into the crowded hallways of Riverside High School. Instead, his status as the new transfer student painted a target on his back that grew brighter with each passing day. The morning routine had become predictable. Marcus would arrive early, slip through the side entrance, and navigate to his locker using the less traveled routes. He'd memorized which hallways to avoid and when. He knew that the third-floor corridor was safest before 7:45 a.m., and the library offered sanctuary during lunch. These survival tactics had worked for exactly 2 weeks before they noticed him. "Fresh meat," Connor Walsh had declared that Tuesday morning, his voice carrying across the sophomore hallway like a judge's verdict. Connor stood 6'2", his athletic build honed by years of football and wrestling. His sandy blonde hair and easy smile masked a cruel streak that ran deep. Flanking him were his faithful shadows, Ryan Torres, wiry and quick with a mean streak that compensated for his smaller stature, and Brett Kumar, whose bulk and blind loyalty made him Connor's perfect enforcer. Marcus had made the mistake of meeting Connor's gaze that first time. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. In the complex social ecosystem of high school, that brief eye contact had been interpreted as a challenge. "You lost, freshman?" Connor had asked, knowing full well Marcus was a sophomore. "Just heading to class," Marcus had replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline already coursing through his system. "Just heading to class," Ryan had mimicked in a high-pitched voice. Listen to this guy. So polite. That had been the beginning. What Connor and his crew didn't know, what nobody at Riverside knew, was that Marcus Chen had been training in mixed martial arts since he was 8 years old. His mother, a former competitive kickboxer, had insisted on it after they'd moved from their rough neighborhood in Chicago. His father, who ran a small gym downtown, had been his primary coach, drilling him in wrestling, boxing, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Marcus held a purple belt in BJJ and had won 3 junior championships before they'd moved to this supposedly quieter town for his dad's new business opportunity. But Marcus had made a promise. After an incident at his previous school, where he'd broken another student's arm in self-defense, even though he'd been cleared of wrongdoing, his parents had made him swear no fighting unless absolutely necessary, no showing off, no escalation. "Violence is a last resort, Marcus," his mother had said, her hands on his shoulders. "We use our skills to protect, not to prove points." So Marcus endured. The harassment started small, books knocked from his hands, accidental shoulder checks in the hallway, his lunch tray bumped, sending food sprawling across the cafeteria floor. Each incident was carefully calculated to humiliate without leaving evidence. "Oops," Brett would say with mock concern after sending Marcus stumbling into a wall. "You should watch where you're going, man. These hallways are dangerous." The teachers saw nothing, or chose to see nothing. Connor Walsh's father was on the school board, and Connor himself was the star wrestler who'd taken the team to state championships. Marcus was nobody, just another new kid who'd eventually find his place or transfer out. By the second month, the attacks had become more creative. They'd figured out his schedule, waiting at strategic points to maximize their impact. Monday mornings, they'd corner him by the science labs. Wednesdays after gym class, when he was tired and the locker room was empty. Fridays, just before the final bell, ensuring he'd have the weekend to recover from whatever humiliation they'd devised. "Hey, Marcus," Connor called out one Thursday afternoon, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "We've been thinking, you've been here, what, 2 months, and you still eat alone? That's just sad, bro." Marcus was loading books into his backpack, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. "I'm fine, thanks." "No, no, no," Ryan interjected, moving to block Marcus's path. "Connor's trying to be nice here. Maybe you should show some appreciation." "Yeah," Brett added, cracking his knuckles in what he probably thought was an intimidating gesture. "We're trying to help you make friends." Marcus shouldered his backpack. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm good." Connor's friendly mask slipped for a moment. "You know what your problem is. You think you're better than everyone, walking around all quiet and mysterious, but you're not special. You're just a nobody who doesn't know his place." "My place is wherever I choose to be," Marcus replied quietly. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Even some passing students slowed, sensing the tension. Connor stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell the energy drink on his breath. Wrong answer. That's when the shoving started. Not enough to knock him down, Connor was too smart for that, but enough to bang Marcus against the lockers. The metal rang out with each impact. "Stop," Marcus said, his voice firm but controlled. "Or what?" Ryan laughed. "You gonna cry? Call your mommy?" Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He could see exactly how this would play out if he let his training take over. Connor's stance was completely open. One leg sweep would put him on the ground. Ryan kept dropping his left hand when he talked, leaving his jaw exposed. Brett was the biggest, but also the slowest. A simple redirect of his momentum would send him crashing into the lockers. 3 moves, maybe 4, that's all it would take. Instead, Marcus forced his hands to relax. "Just leave me alone." Connor seemed genuinely puzzled by Marcus's refusal to fight back. In his world, everything was about dominance and submission. Marcus's passive resistance didn't fit the script. "You're pathetic," Connor finally spat, stepping back. "Come on, guys, he's not even worth it." As they walked away, laughing and congratulating themselves, Marcus heard Connor say, "We need to step up our game, break this kid properly." A voice beside him made Marcus jump. "They're going to keep escalating, you know." He turned to find a girl with striking green eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail. She'd appeared seemingly from nowhere. "I'm Elena," she said, extending a hand. "Elena Rodriguez. I've been watching this whole thing unfold." Marcus shook her hand cautiously. "Marcus, I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are by now. Connor's latest project." She leaned against the lockers, studying him. "You could fight back. I saw how you were standing. You know how to handle yourself." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "Violence doesn't solve anything." Elena laughed, but it wasn't mocking. "That's noble and all, but Connor doesn't speak noble. He only understands power, and right now he thinks you have none. Let him think that." "You're either very wise or very foolish," Elena said, pushing off from the lockers. "If you ever need backup, or just someone to sit with at lunch so you're not such an obvious target, find me in the art room. I practically live there." She walked away before Marcus could respond, leaving him to wonder if he'd just made a friend or identified another potential problem. The weekend offered respite. Marcus spent Saturday morning at his father's gym, helping teach the kids' class. Watching the 7- and 8-year-olds practice their forms, he remembered being that age, full of excitement about learning to fight like a ninja, as he'd put it then. "Your guard's dropping," his father, James Chen, observed as they sparred that afternoon. Marcus adjusted, raising his hands higher. His father came at him with a combination, jab, cross, hook, that Marcus slipped easily, countering with a takedown attempt that transitioned into a smooth armbar. "Better," James said, tapping out, "but your mind's elsewhere. What's going on?" Marcus released the hold and sat back on the mat. "Just school stuff." His father's expression grew serious. "The same boys?" Marcus had mentioned the bullying in passing, downplaying its severity. "It's fine. I'm handling it. By letting them push you around. By not making things worse," Marcus corrected. I told you to avoid unnecessary fights," James interrupted. "But I also taught you to protect yourself. There's a difference between restraint and letting people walk all over you." "Where's the line, Dad? When do I decide enough is enough?" James was quiet for a moment, then said, "When they cross the boundary from harassment to actual danger, when walking away is no longer an option, you'll know when that moment comes." Marcus wasn't sure he would. Monday arrived too quickly. Marcus had almost made it through the morning without incident when he heard Connor's voice echoing down the hallway. "There he is, our favorite punching bag." Marcus kept walking, but Ryan and Brett materialized in front of him, blocking the path to his next class. "We missed you on Friday afternoon," Connor said, approaching from behind. "Had to leave early for a wrestling meet. But don't worry, we're going to make up for lost time." "I have class," Marcus said evenly. "So do we," Ryan grinned. "Consider this a different kind of education." They herded him toward the stairwell, their bodies forming a moving cage around him. Marcus could have broken free. A simple duck and pivot would have done it, but that would mean revealing his capabilities, and they weren't actually touching him yet, just using their presence to guide him where they wanted. The third-floor bathroom. Marcus's stomach sank as he realized where they were headed. It was the most isolated spot in the school, rarely used because of perpetually broken fixtures and poor ventilation. "Inside," Connor commanded, holding the door open with mock courtesy. Marcus evaluated his options. He could run, but that would only delay the inevitable and probably make things worse. He could stand his ground here in the hallway where there might be witnesses, or he could go inside and hope they'd just talk tough and leave. "We're not asking," Brett said, giving Marcus a shove that sent him stumbling through the doorway. The bathroom was exactly as grim as Marcus remembered from his one previous visit. Cracked tiles, flickering fluorescent lights, and a persistent smell of industrial disinfectant that couldn't quite mask the underlying decay. Connor let the door swing shut with a bang that echoed off the walls. "You know, Marcus, we've been pretty patient with you. 3 months of trying to teach you your place, and you still don't get it." "What do you want?" Marcus asked, backing toward the sinks. "Respect," Connor said simply. "Acknowledgement. You walk around this school like you're some kind of ghost, too good to interact with anyone. That ends today." "How about we settle this differently?" Marcus suggested. "You want respect? How about a fair competition? Wrestling match in the gym, proper rules, referee and everything?" Connor laughed. "You think this is about fair? This is about reality. And the reality is, there's 3 of us and 1 of you." They moved in coordination, clearly practiced at this. Ryan went left, Brett right, while Connor came straight at him. Marcus's training screamed at him to act, sweep Connor's leg, redirect Brett into Ryan, create space, escape. But he held back, still clinging to his promise. The first grab was clumsy. Brett's huge hands reached for Marcus's shoulders, but Marcus twisted away, using minimal movement to avoid contact. Ryan tried to catch his arm, but Marcus pulled it back just in time. "Stop dancing around!" Connor snarled, frustrated by Marcus's evasion. They pressed closer, limiting his space. Finally, Connor managed to grab Marcus's shirt, yanking him forward. Marcus could have used the momentum against him, turned it into a throw, but instead he just tried to pull away. "Got him!" Connor announced triumphantly. "Brett, grab his arms!" Brett's grip was like iron, pinning Marcus's arms behind his back. Marcus tested the hold. Sloppy technique, easy to break if he applied the right leverage, but breaking it would mean fighting back, and he still wasn't ready to cross that line. You know what your problem is? Connor said, getting in Marcus's face. You don't understand the natural order. Some people are predators, some are prey. Guess which one you are? Let me go, Marcus said calmly, though his heart was racing. Or what? Connor challenged. What are you going to do? That's when Connor moved behind him, and Marcus felt an arm snake around his neck. His body recognized the danger before his mind fully processed it. A rear naked choke, badly applied, but dangerous nonetheless. Connor, what are you? Ryan started, sounding uncertain. Shut up, Connor snapped. He needs to learn. The pressure increased. Connor's technique was terrible. He was using pure strength instead of proper leverage, his arm positioned wrong, but it was still cutting off Marcus's air. Marcus's training kicked in automatically. He knew exactly how to escape, drop his weight, turn into the choke, create space with his shoulder, reverse the position. He'd done it 1,000 times in practice, but he hesitated. Was this the line? Was this enough? The pressure increased. Black spots appeared in Marcus's vision. Connor, ease up, Brett said, his voice distant and worried. I said shut up! Connor tightened the hold. Marcus's hands came up instinctively, trying to pull Connor's arm away, but Brett still had his arms partially trapped. The black spots expanded, multiplying like spreading ink. His lungs burned for air that wouldn't come. This is the line, Marcus thought distantly as darkness crept in from the edges. But it's too late. The last thing he heard was Ryan saying, "Dude, he's going limp," before everything went black. Consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from deep water. Marcus's first sensation was cold. The bathroom floor beneath him was like ice. Then came the pain. His throat felt raw, his head throbbed, and his neck ached where Connor's arm had pressed. Seriously messed up, Connor. He could be really hurt. He's fine. Look, he's waking up. Marcus opened his eyes to find 3 faces staring down at him. Connor tried to look confident, but Marcus could see the fear underneath. Brett was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Ryan kept glancing at the door like he wanted to bolt. Marcus pushed himself up slowly, his back finding the wall of the bathroom stall. The world tilted for a moment, then steadied. He touched his throat gingerly, feeling the tenderness there. See, he's fine, Connor said, but his voice cracked slightly. Just needed a little nap. Marcus looked at each of them in turn, saying nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Maybe we should go, Brett suggested. Nobody's going anywhere, Marcus said quietly. His voice was hoarse, but there was something in it that made all 3 boys freeze. Marcus stood up slowly, deliberately. His movements were different now, controlled, purposeful, dangerous. The mask of the meek new kid had finally cracked. You choked me unconscious, Marcus stated. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. Connor tried to salvage his bravado. You needed to learn. No, Marcus interrupted. You need to learn. He took a step forward. All 3 boys stepped back. You want to know what I learned? Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. I learned that my parents were wrong. Some people don't understand restraint. They see it as weakness. Look, maybe things got out of hand. Ryan started. Marcus turned his gaze to Ryan, who immediately stopped talking. I've been training in mixed martial arts for 8 years, Marcus said conversationally. My mother was a professional fighter. My father owns a gym. I've won championships. I could have ended this on day 1, but I chose not to. That was my mistake. Connor laughed nervously. You're full of... Marcus moved. It was so fast, so fluid, that Connor didn't even have time to react. One moment he was standing, the next he was on the ground, Marcus's knee on his chest, his arm trapped in a position that even the 3 boys could recognize as seconds away from serious damage. This is an arm bar, Marcus explained calmly. If I extend your arm just 2 more inches, your elbow joint will separate. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to heal, assuming no complications. Connor's eyes were wide with shock and fear. "Don't!" Marcus released him and stood up in one smooth motion. Connor scrambled backward, cradling his arm even though Marcus hadn't actually applied pressure. Brett stepped forward, fists raised. "You little—" Marcus shifted his stance slightly. "You sure you want to do that? Your stance is wrong, your guard is too low, and you're telegraphing your intentions. I can see 3 different ways to put you on the ground before you can throw a punch." Brett hesitated, then lowered his hands. "The choke Connor used," Marcus continued. "Amateur hour. A proper rear naked choke targets the carotid arteries, not the windpipe. It's actually safer when done correctly, which is ironic. Connor could have killed me with his sloppy technique." The bathroom door opened suddenly, and Vice Principal Harrison walked in, taking in the scene. Connor on the floor, the other boys backed against the wall, and Marcus standing calmly in the center. "What's going on here?" Harrison demanded. There was a moment of silence. Marcus met Connor's eyes, a clear message passing between them. "Nothing, sir," Connor said slowly, getting to his feet. "Just talking." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "It doesn't look like just talking to me. Chen, are you all right?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir, everything's fine." Harrison looked skeptical, but without anyone willing to report an incident, his hands were tied. "All of you get to class now, and I'll be watching." As they filed out, Connor hung back. When the others were out of earshot, he said quietly, "This isn't over." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Yes, it is. You crossed a line today, Connor. You choked me unconscious. That's assault. I could press charges, get you expelled, ruin your wrestling career, but I won't. If you leave me alone, and not just me, you're done bullying anyone in this school." "You can't." "I can, and I will," Marcus interrupted. "Test me if you want, but know that I have witnesses, and unlike you, I actually know what I'm doing. Your choice." Connor's jaw clenched, but he nodded once before walking away. Word spread through Riverside High like wildfire. By lunch, everyone had heard some version of the bathroom confrontation. The stories grew with each telling. Marcus had taken down all 3 bullies simultaneously. He was secretly a cage fighter. He'd made Connor cry. Marcus sat in his usual spot, trying to eat his sandwich in peace, when Elena Rodriguez slid into the seat across from him. "So the sleeping dragon finally woke up," she said with a knowing smile. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus replied, though there was a hint of a smile on his face. "Right. Connor Walsh just happened to decide to leave you alone out of the goodness of his heart. Maybe he had a change of perspective." Elena laughed. "I'll bet he did. You know, the art room offer still stands, though something tells me you won't need to hide anymore." She was right. The rest of the week passed without incident. Connor and his crew gave Marcus a wide berth, and their bullying of other students noticeably decreased. Other kids who had been their victims started walking with more confidence, no longer flinching when they passed in the halls. Friday afternoon, Marcus was at his locker when someone cleared their throat behind him. He turned to find Connor alone, without his usual backup. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, ready for anything. Connor shifted uncomfortably. "Look, about Monday, that choke thing, that was messed up. I could have really hurt you." Marcus studied him for a moment. "Yes, you could have. I've been thinking about what you said, about crossing lines." Connor seemed to struggle with the words. "My dad, he always taught me that strength meant dominating others, being the alpha. But when you had me in that armbar, you could have hurt me, and you didn't. That's the difference between strength and brutality," Marcus said. Connor nodded slowly. Maybe we could start over. I mean, not be friends or anything, but just neutral." Marcus considered this. Part of him wanted to reject the offer, to hold on to the anger from months of torment. But he also remembered his father's words about knowing when enough was enough. "Neutral works," Marcus agreed. Connor extended his hand. After a moment, Marcus shook it. As Connor walked away, Elena appeared beside Marcus. "Did Connor Walsh just apologize to you?" "Something like that." "This school is getting weird," she said with a grin. "Want to grab pizza with some people? There's a group heading to Antonio's." 6 months ago, Marcus would have reflexively declined. 3 months ago, he would have been too afraid of drawing attention. But now, "Sure," he said. "Sounds good." As they walked toward the exit, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. He'd come to Riverside wanting to be invisible, to avoid conflict at all costs. But sometimes, standing up for yourself wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about proving you were stronger or tougher. It was about drawing a line and saying, "This far, no further." The choke had been his line. Connor crossing it had forced Marcus to reveal who he really was. Not a violent person, but someone capable of defending himself and others. Someone who understood that true strength came not from dominating others, but from the discipline to use your power responsibly. His parents had been partially right. Violence should be a last resort. But they'd been wrong about one thing. Sometimes showing what you're capable of is the only way to prevent violence from escalating further. As Marcus walked out of Riverside High that Friday afternoon, surrounded by new friends and free from the shadow of fear that had haunted him for months, he finally understood the balance between restraint and self-respect. He'd found his place not by hiding or by fighting, but by choosing the right moment to stand his ground. The bullies had choked him unconscious, pushed him past his breaking point. But in doing so, they'd awakened something they never expected. Not a violent revenge, but a controlled demonstration of strength that changed the entire dynamic of their school. And Marcus. He was finally free to just be himself. A teenager who happened to know martial arts, who chose friendship over isolation, and who understood that sometimes the best revenge isn't brutal at all. It's simply showing others that their power over you was always an illusion.